The Estes Wizard, one of the most iconic rockets in the Estes fleet, has had over 4 decades of longevity and is one that most rocketeers have either built and flown or have seen others build and fly. Its simple design and snazzy looks have definitely made it one of the favorites for both beginner and experienced modelers alike. Making its debut in the Estes catalog in 1978, this new BT-20 design was sure to capture the eye of any prospective rocket buyer. With its unique purple and white paint scheme and wrapped with a Patriot Stars stripe, it no doubt screamed magic and patriotism all at the same time. With an overall length of 12 inches, it gave the modeler something worthy of being displayed, yet not taking up too much shelf space. Although it comes with a streamer in the kit, one could easily pack a 6-inch parachute, or even a 9-inch if you're courageous enough. Estes kept the same paint and decal scheme on the rocket for 14 years, until 1992. But then in 1993 they made a radical change in the design of the decals and paint. Although the actual rocket design did not change at all, other than transitioning from a balsa nose cone to a plastic one in 1982, the new look was one that you either loved or hated. In this second part of 2, I will be building the original version of the Wizard and replicating its face card looks. Although I do modify a few things in the actual building, aside from the instructions, I in no way change the looks of the rocket in either design or color. So sit back and enjoy the build. Welcome to part 2 in my building series on the Estes Wizard. Now, if you remember, just last week or so I released a video on the building of this one right here. This is the, well, we'll call it the modern version. This color scheme was released in 1993 and it's still being released to the present day. But we're going to go back in time and we're going to build the retro Wizard. And to do that, I had to create my own kit. They're few and far between if you want to try to find an original that's still out there. But it's a lot easier and in many ways cheaper if you just clone it yourself. And that's what I've decided to do here. This is a little kit that I made up from parts that I kind of got from all over the place. And we'll go through it real quick and show you what it consists of and where I got the parts from. And quick history, the original Wizard was released in 1978. It made its debut in the catalog. And it kept this color scheme, the white and purple, up until 1992, and the 93 is when they released the new wild color scheme. So we're just going to build a retro Wizard with the decals of the old style. Now I'm not going to do a lot of highlighting on the build of this per se because it's identical to what you saw on this one. I'll video it. Now I may have double the speed or something like that to get through it quicker, but I won't have to explain everything all over again. So real quick, let's go through the kit and show you what it consists of. Just a lot of information on the internet you're able to glean from, and I was able to find just a copy of the face card, so I printed that on cardstock, so that's kind of our display piece there. That's what the face card looked like in the original kit. Jim Z has a website where you can download the old plans, the old instructions, pretty much anything and everything for the old kits that you wanted to find. So I was able to find the original plan or instructions for the Wizard, and it gives you a good rundown of the parts needed and everything. And so I'm going to use this kind of as a go by. So I'll point out the differences though as we do come across a few. First and foremost, this body tube here, it's actually out of a Viking kit. I did steal from a Viking bulk kit, and just to get the tube. So again, that's just a BT-20. It measures 8.5 inches. So again, that's just a standard BT-20 from a Viking. Okay. I ordered from eRockets. If you ever go to their website, it's erockets.biz, B-I-Z, and they have tons of old, a lot of reproduced stuff, but it's for the old retro rockets. And they do sell balsa nose cones. Now I could use a plastic nose cone like came in the new Wizard or the Viking, but I want it to be authentic to that time period. So I was able to get a BNC, which stands for balsa nose cone 20N, which is the style that we need for the retro Wizard. So pick that up from erockets.biz. Now, part of Jim Z's plans, they offer templates and whatnot for all the parts. So I was able to get the template for the Wizard, and I just took a piece of 1/16 inch balsa and I cut out my own fins. Pretty simple, straightforward process, and they're already sanded down to be equal with one another, so they're pretty much ready to paper right now. Just got some elastic band. I believe actually this came from a Bandits kit that I had laying around that I had pulled parts from, so that's an old Estes Bandit shot cord. A little eyelet that I got also at eRockets. This will be screwed into the nose cone, which is attached to the shot cord. And I've got an engine block, and I'm guessing, yeah, this came from the Viking also. So 2 Viking parts, homemade fins, balsa nose cone from eRockets, shot cord from a Bandit, and an eyelet from eRockets. And that's it for the hardware. Now for, I didn't see the white launch lug on the white table. Launch lug, probably, yeah, this is also from the Viking. So 3 Viking parts. So there you go. Now, when it comes to decals, I was able to print up my own decals. So I'm going to leave them in the wax paper for now just to keep them safe. But these are water slide decals that I printed on my own laser jet printer. And they came out, in my opinion, fairly well. I'm excited to use them. I've had a lot of success with the water slides lately that I've been producing. So this will probably go on with no problems at all. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And what's nice about these are they're dark decals, and they're going to go on the white portion of the body. So it should, the opacity of the darkness of the decals over the, with the transparent clear, you'll see the white. Anyway, it should come out just fine. So I've also got a little printed shot cord mount, and that's it. I did go off on my own already and create the multiplier for this kit based on this placard here, and it came out to a multiplier of 1.91. So when I start measuring up for the stripes, for where the purple and the white meet, for where I put the decals, I'll just have to multiply this picture by 1.91 to get the actual dimensions for where it goes on that. And if you want further explanation on how I created this, you can go back and watch the first video. And I'll be referencing the first video a lot because a lot of what I skip in this one will have been covered in that. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with the build and get cracking. If you remember, in the first Wizard build, I used this little marking guide here to make the marks for the 3 fins, but unfortunately it doesn't give you the mark for the launch lug. And because I want it as straight as I can get it and centered as I can get it, I'm going to go ahead and forego this for this build, just to show you how you can use the fin marking guide that comes in the kit. Again, pretty straightforward. You cut it out, you wrap it around your body tube, and you line up the little notch marks that are right there. Just take a piece of masking tape to hold it down, and just kind of drag it near the end of the tube there. And some people mark both the fore and the aft mark lines there. I just do one set because the marking jig is going to draw the line regardless of where that second mark is at. The other thing I want to do real quick is just tape this down to the cardboard so I don't get any rotation on it. So we'll just go ahead and make little notches at each of the 3 fin marks. One for the launch lug. I'll put an LL next to that. Another fin. And another fin. So that's all there is to doing that. Then we'll just remove that piece of tape. Slide that off. Take our marking guide. And just draw our three fin lines. And our launch slug. The launch slug, I'm going to draw its line a little further up, since that's where it's going to be mounted. And our third fin line. And there you have it. So I got the 4 marks, 4 lines made. The other thing I want to go ahead and do is get the engine block glued in. And you can see, when you know it, you've done it a few times, you can kind of go with it. I'm not even looking at the instructions. I know that you mark 1/4 inch down on the yellow tube. This is the same tube I used on the last Wizard build, so I'm just going to run it to the same mark. I'm going to glue down the tube the length of 1 Q-tip, and then we'll insert our motor mount. So with that, let me go ahead and get some glue on the Q-tip. Let's do one more thin coat. Okay. Just take a look down there. Yep, it's fully saturated with the glue. Slip the engine block in, take our spacer, get it in and push it to that mark. Stop and immediately pull it out before this sticks. Okay, so now we're gonna let that dry. I'm gonna scuff up these lines a little bit with some sandpaper, and while that again is drying, we can begin actually papering our fins. Okay, just like before, I'm going to run a little bit of an overlap, and I'm just going to draw a very rough design around the fins. There we go. There we go. And they all fit within just nicely. Take my scissors. Okay, take my 3 fins. A pencil and a ruler, and just draw my 1/16 inch lines. Okay, while the papering is being dried and glued down between my plywood sheets, I figured I'd take this time to go ahead and attack the nose cone. Now, if you remember the last Wizard, it was a plastic nose cone and there was absolutely nothing to do to it until the very end when we had to glue the insert in. But with balsa nose cones, it's a little bit different. The balsa nose cones, when you get them from E-Rockets, tend to be a little bit on the larger side and they don't fit real well. Now this one I've already sanded down a little bit, which really helps. But if it won't fit into the top of the tube, just take some sandpaper, kind of wrap it around the shoulder, and just kind of rotate the nose cone inside the sandpaper until you get a nice smooth fit, which is now what we have. So that's perfect. Okay, the next thing we want to do is, let me set the tube aside, is we need to insert our screw eye. Now the screw eye, you can just eyeball it if you want. I'm just going to go ahead and get a pin. You know, depending on how perfect you want to make it, you can make crosses and X's and meet in the middle. But I'm just going to kind of eyeball the center. Just like so. The threads on your screw eye are self-tapping, so you can just go ahead and get it started and then start rotating the cone around it, and it'll start to pull it in. Take it all the way in. Like so. And then you want to take it back out. Just get a little bit of wood glue. You can use epoxy. CA, you got to be really quick with the CA. I wouldn't recommend using super glue because if you stop halfway, it might bind up on you. So use something that gives you a little bit of working time. So we'll just put just a little dollop right there on the top of the hole. Maybe a little bit on the threads as well. Okay. And then screw it back in. Now, that excess glue, it's okay to have it because it's actually going to build up somewhat of a fillet. Okay. You don't want to strip it, so just take it down until you feel a little resistance and then go ahead and stop right there, which is what I'm feeling. So I'm just going to let that dry as is. And the next thing we're going to want to do is actually, we're going to sand it down lightly with some sandpaper, but we are going to dip this in a pint of sanding sealer. And that's going to help tighten up and strengthen the wood to where you can sand it and it'll hold that sanding a little bit better, and it'll take the paint a lot better as well. So that'll be the next step once this dries. Okay, I'm going to make up the shock cord mount real quick. If you guys remember how this goes, it's you glue on 2 and 3. And just get messy with it. There's no clean way to do it. Okay, just lay down your cord at an angle. Okay. And then put some on top of the cord. Fold 1 over 2. Kind of squeegee out what you can. And fold 2 over 3. Just like so, and then I'm going to take this outside and put it in the vise and let it dry overnight nice and flat. Okay, the first side is dry, so now we're just going to trim off the excess and do the other side. Okay, briefly I want to show you how we're going to seal the balsa wood, and this really can't get any easier. Let me set the cradle aside. So you just take your nose cone, and it's good that we've already installed the eyelet because it gives us something to hold on to. In this case, I'm just going to use a pair of needle nose pliers. And I've already kind of smoothed it up a little bit, but we're going to sand it pretty good after we seal it anyway, so don't worry too much about how rough or smooth it may be. But this is what I use. I use Minwax sanding sealer. Get this at Lowe's, and I kind of stirred it up a little bit, but they say to mix it up really well, but I've used it just as it is, and I've never had any problems with it. So I'm literally just going to dunk it in, and then with a paper towel, just kind of dabs the excess off, and we're good. It really can't get much simpler. And then I'm just gonna, after I do that, I'm gonna route it through this little paintbrush handle, and I'm just gonna hang this somewhere so it can just air dry. And it should dry in like less than an hour, so it doesn't take long. And I want to do 2 coats. I want to do the first coat, let it dry, sand it smooth with probably 500 grit, and then dip it again, and then sand it with another 500 to 1000, and then she'll take primer coat really, really well. So here we go. It's literally this easy. And I'm literally doing the whole thing just because I want to harden the wood as well. Okay, let me tilt it, let it drip off as much as possible. Whatever you do, you don't want to lose it and let it slip out of the pliers. That would be very bad. Okay. Run that through there. There we go. Still dripping a little bit, which is good. We just want it to absorb into the wood, and then any excess just to drip off on its own. And that's exactly what it's doing. See, it's still dripping little by little, but the drips are slowing down. And I'll dab this paper towel on it too, just to help gather up. I'm gonna let one more drip. Okay, now I'm just gonna kind of let that soak up any extra. Okay, so I'm gonna go let this hang dry, and in an hour or so I'm gonna sand it down with 500, and then I'm gonna dip it again, let that dry, and sand it down again. So I'm not gonna have to show the second sequence through again, but just wanted to show you how I do it. And then I'm probably gonna have to sand around the shoulder again just to get it to fit nicely in the tube, but that's easy enough to do. Okay, a few things we're gonna get done all in this one step is, one, all the fins are dry from the paper, so I'll just take my X-Acto knife like I've done before, and just following the fin as a template, follow along. Easy peasy. Okay, there. So we got all 3 fins papered. Now I'm just going to take my sanding block and round the leading edge and the tip. Now we take our, let me just get some scratch paper and just kind of help remove some of the fibers that kind of are sticking out. There we go. And we just take our CA glue, and you want to get a piece of wax paper to lay them down on. And just do all 3 sides except the root. So while those dry, one last thing is the second coat of sanding sealer on the nose cone is now dry. So I'm just going to take some 500 sandpaper and just kind of sand down the roughness from the sealer. But we don't want to go through it, obviously. Just want to buff off the top layer. See, that's coming out nice and smooth. See, that'll prime and paint really nice like that now. Okay, we also want to clean up the shoulder. Okay, there we go. So that is now ready for prime and paint, actually. Okay, so we are now just about ready to start gluing the fins on the body tube. We're going to let the CA set up a little bit more, smooth out the edges once the CA is dry, and then we can start gluing them onto the body tube. Okay, off camera, I went ahead and sanded the nose cone down. Got it very, very smooth, and I also had to work on the shoulder a little bit to make it fit a little smoother into the nose cone or into the body tube, but that's good to go. So now we are ready to glue the fins on. I've already kind of fine sanded those as well after the CA dried. So we're just going to go ahead and glue these on. Now if you remember, we need to mark 3/8 of an inch up from the base. Okay, let me scuff up this just a little bit more, and I'm going to put the fins on the side of the line like I did on the previous build. Seems to make things a little bit easier. Okay. Okay, let that sit for a minute. Okay, that's had a minute to set. Now we can just set it right back in position. There, holds nice and firm. Line it up. There you can see. It's lined up perpendicular to the body tube. And I'll go ahead and do the other two the same way, and we'll get back to it and do some fillets and the launch lug. Okay, now it's time to lay down our fillets. I've got my rocket epoxy mixed up and ready to go. I've got the masking complete on the fin area. Again, I'm not going to put any masking on the actual fin because I don't want to risk peeling up the paper when I pull the tape off. But we had some good luck with it on the last Wizard, so hopefully we'll have the same luck on this one. So I'm going to get going on that. Okay, the fillets are done. Now we're just going to let that sit overnight, and tomorrow we're going to glue on the launch lug and then do the fillets on it. So as you can see, quite a lot has been done since the last segment. I do most of my painting off camera out in the paint booth in the garage, and it's just not suitable for filming. So unfortunately you don't see a lot of that. So you see pre-painting and then post-painting, but not actual painting. But as you can see, it is done. I've got the gloss white on top. I've got for the purple I went with a Krylon. It's called Gloss Rich Plum. It's a pretty close color, and it's the closest I could find to the face card photo. But underneath the paint I've got 2 coats of primer. I've got the first coat is a gray coat of primer, and that was just able to identify any bumps or things that needed smoothed down. I dry sanded that because I didn't want to wet sand through that into the cardboard, so I just dry sanded the gray primer. Then I laid down a coat of white primer, and on that I was able to wet sand it down smooth. I used 500 and 1000 prior to the paint coat. Then I hit the whole thing with the gloss white, let that dry for a few days, then I masked off the tail section, and I laid down the Gloss Rich Plum. And unfortunately, and I'm not sure why it was done this way, but when I measured the purple on the placard from the bottom of the rocket tube to the top of the purple stripe, came out to be 55 centimeters when I did my scale ratio. So when I measured 55 millimeters up, that got me about 1/8 of an inch onto the launch lug. So whoever designed it, the paint scheme, if they had just set it 1/8 of an inch lower, it would have been a lot easier. I wouldn't have had to finagle around the launch lug, but that's okay. I used Tamiya tape, and that stuff works wonders. It was able to go right around it, up and down the fillet, and 0 leaks, no bleed throughs or anything. So that worked out real well. And I'll zoom in here so you can get a good look at it. And then once we do, we can begin the decals. So let's go ahead and zoom in on the body, and then we're going to start cracking on the decals. And then we're going to let that sit for a few days, and then we'll clear coat it and call this project done. So let's jump into the decals next. So here's a good close-up of the final paint job. Like I said, it's just unfortunate that the bottom 1/8 of an inch of the launch lug required paint on the purple. So again, kind of going around the curve of the fillet, over the lug, down the other fillet, made a little bit of a tricky work with the masking tape. But again, Tamiya tape is phenomenal, so it no bleed throughs or anything on that. Held up really well. So I'm very pleased with it. And it's cured well enough to take the decals. But I'm still going to let the whole thing cure for 2 or 3 more days before I apply the clear. Just because I've had some issues in the past with the Pledge floor polish cracking if the paint underneath isn't fully cured. So I'm still going to give it a few more days with the decals on, just so everything can settle down and gas out and fully cure. But yeah, so there we go. I'm going to rotate it this way so I can get the same orientation that's on the face card. And I apologize, it's going to be upside down to you, but it's going to be right side up for me, and right now I kind of need it. I did trim the stars decal so that it will not be going over the launch lug. It's going to fit up into this fillet here and then come around and meet up on the other side of the other fillet. But I'm not going to try to go over the launch lug. That's just going to be, I can just see that turning into a nightmare, and then frantically trying to get it on before it dries, and then just bad things. So we're going to forego that. I'm just going to fit it right up into the fillet here, wrap it around to the other fillet right there. And I've already got it trimmed and ready to go on that front. So once we get that on, then I can use the placard for some easier measurements for the main Wizard decal, which I've got right here. There you go. So it's really simple, just the 2 decals, and that's it for this rocket. So I'm going to set that one out of the way right now, and let's go ahead and get going on the stripes. So I'm just going to bring in my little water dish here, drop it in the water, and what the instructions called for is barely overlapping one of the black stripes onto the purple. So in that case, if you had, say, a jagged edge or your paint wasn't exactly crisp and clean on that line, you can fix that with the decal. That wasn't an issue. I had a nice and straight, clean line. Unfortunately, I got it covered up with the decal, but that's okay. So let me grab a paper towel and a Q-tip. Grab a couple Q-tips just to have on standby. I'll use those to help roll out any air bubbles. Okay, so the decal is breaking free now. Okay, and these are homemade decals. This is my first attempt at building a rocket using homemade decals for my channel. I've tested some and played with it, but I haven't actually done one on a video yet. So let me lay that down. Let it roll out. A little bit of an air bubble there. Okay. Work that out. Kind of let gravity do its thing. And it falls right into place at the launch lug fillet. See if I can slide a little bit. They weren't exactly even with each other. Let me grab my tweezers. To help maneuver that around a little bit better. Sorry, I'm off camera there. I'm just trying to work that air bubble out. There we go. Get some water in there. There we go. Now I'm going to start in the middle on the other side and just start pushing out any air or water bubbles with the Q-tip. Okay. Now we'll start working it the other way. Again, just pushing any wrinkles or bubbles out. We have it. I am very pleased with that result. I see no wrinkles, no bubbles. And when I got to the end of the stripe, you know, a little ball of water came out, so that means I was pushing the water out as I moved the Q-tip along. Okay. Let me grab a paper towel and just sort of blot out any moisture, just kind of gently wipe. Now, I said this was my first time doing the homemade decals. I did build another rocket that I did off camera, kind of as a test piece, and the decals came out well, so I knew they were more than likely going to work just fine on this, but this is my first time actually debuting one of my own decal sets. So, well, that is absolutely gorgeous. That just screams vintage Wizard right there. I really could not be much happier. So with that, I'm going to set it down in the cradle, and we need to start doing some measurements for our Wizard decal. Let me clean up some water. Okay, so remember our multiplier from our calculation on this one came out to be 1.91. So let me grab my calculator here. Okay, we're going to measure the face card first, and I'm going to measure from the, let's do the D to the front of the nose cone, because I can see that, and it gets a little wonky when you deal with that Estes decal because it's off-centered. So, and the other thing I want to mention too is, looks like this decal is centered on the fin. It's not in the middle, it's centered on a fin. Well, it's kind of half and half, to be honest with you. It's centered, I'm going to line it up between two fins because that's the way the other Wizard was, the modern Wizard. So I'm going to set it between, I'm going to set it between these two fins because the launch lug is going to be on the left side facing it, and that's the way the other Wizard is, so I wanted to mimic that. So let's do a measurement here. Let me set this out of the way just for a second. Okay, we're going to measure the D to the front of the nose cone in centimeters. Sorry, centimeters. But we're going to count the millimeters. Okay, it looks like it's going to be 13 millimeters to the top. Okay, so we know the placard is 13, so we have 13 times our multiplier, which is 1.91 equals 24.83 millimeters on the actual rocket. Okay, so 24.83, I'm just going to round that up to 25 just to keep it simple, and you're not going to see or notice a difference. Okay, I'm going to get a little piece of Tamiya tape just to act as a reference line. I mean, it doesn't take much at all. Okay, so I'm going to measure 25 millimeters from the front and lay this piece of tape right at that mark, and that's what I'm going to run the D up to. Okay, so 25 millimeters. Yeah, 25 millimeters. Right there. Okay, let me just double check. Yep, right on the mark, 25 millimeters. Okay, so that's the point we're aiming for. Okay, so the D is going to end up on that. Okay, and everything else is going to lay down, and we're just going to eyeball it from overhead, centering between those two fins there. Okay, we are set to go. Let's drop this in the water. And the paper I use, Sunny Scopa, it releases very quickly. Like in less than 10 seconds. See, it's already released. 10 seconds, it's up. Okay, let me just wipe some water down here so we've got some wiggle room. We can maneuver it around. Okay. Drag this off. Okay. Okay, we're going to drag it up to our tape. I'm going to eyeball it from overhead, line it up at the center. It looks good. Let me get this tape out of the way so it doesn't become a permanent fixture. And let me start pressing this end down so it'll hold its position. And again, just work that water out. Before I get too hard with it, let me make sure it's still exactly where I want it. I want to adjust it just a skosh that way. There we go. Okay, that looks good. Okay, let me blot out some water with the paper towel. Sort of rolling. I'm not dragging, I'm just sort of rolling it over the decal so I don't shift it out of position. Okay, lightly pulling it now that it's starting to take form and hold its shape. All right, there you have it. I am tickled silly with that. That is just awesome. So let me turn this around to face the camera. There is our Retro Wizard. I'm gonna let that dry for a few days, and then we're gonna come back and hit it with the Pledge floor polish and the nose cone, and we are gonna have a completed rocket. So stand by for the next segment. I cannot wait. Okay, so the paint and decals have had a good 3 to 4 days now to dry. So they've completely gassed out and everything's ready to apply the clear coat. And before I do, I just want to point out a couple things. One, I do have a bottle of Pledge Revive It floor gloss, and these are not available anymore. I can't find them in the stores. Other people are saying that they're not available. I don't really know how to go about getting it if you don't already have some. But I have also heard of this product. I've not used it yet, and I'm not going to use it just yet. But I picked this up at Lowe's. It's called Quick Shine, and I've seen some other YouTubers talking about using this, and they claim it's as good as Pledge. So if you're not able to find this, this might be the next best thing. It's worth a shot. Like I said, I know Chris over at HPI Guy's Workshop used it as a demo on one of his models, and it laid down nice and clear. It self-leveled. Basically, it was Pledge in a different bottle. It is a little bit milkier color. It's not as clear as the Pledge is, but once it dries, it looked perfectly clear. It didn't crackle or anything. So again, this might be the next best alternative if you can't find this in the stores. Again, I got this from Lowe's for less than $10. So, and if it's the same, let's see, this is 27 floor ounces, 20, yeah, exact same quantity, and this will last somebody years and years, so this should last years and years as well. But we're going to use the Pledge for the Wizard, just to be consistent, because that's what I did the last Wizard on. So I'm going to bring the camera in closer, zoom in, and we're going to put down a quick coat and let it dry. I'll show you how I do it, and yeah, we're this close to being finished. Once the clear coat is dry and done, I can go ahead and glue in the shock cord mount and call it good. So let's get right to it. Okay, now it's time to apply our coat of Pledge Clear floor gloss. And what I like to do is the little sprayer on top, it really tends to stick over time, and it doesn't open up really well, so I just kind of forego that. And this isn't much easier. There we go. The solution actually dries and it kind of glues things to itself. I just take it out and pour it in a little plastic cup. Doesn't take much at all. And it's a good idea just to wipe down the threads so you don't get what happened to me again. And then I take a simple foam brush. This is what, a 1-inch brush, I guess. And I lay down not only the paper towel, but I have a piece of wax paper underneath just to kind of protect the surface underneath that. And literally top to bottom, I leave it standing vertically, and I just, from top to bottom, I just run the clear down and let it drip off the fins onto the paper towel, and you're good to go. So it's, again, pretty straightforward. Just from the top. Okay. And I'll come back and do the fins. On another coat. There was enough polish on it. I'm able to do all 6 passes here with just that one dip in the cup. Okay, and just a little bit more. Yeah, we're just going to apply it down each side of each fin. Just like so. Okay, and I'm just going to let that dry for 30 to 45 minutes, and I probably won't even mess with doing a second coat unless I think I really need to. If I'm not going to fly it, I think 1 coat's enough. If you are going to fly it, you may want to put on multiple coats, but I would recommend letting it sit a day between coats. I've had experiences where if you put the second coat on within, say an hour or so after the first coat, the bottom coat hasn't had enough time to gas out yet, and that top coat kind of seals the bottom coat in, and it can cause a crackling effect. So I suggest if you are going to put multiple coats on, either do them right at the same time while they're both still wet, or wait a good day or so for the bottom coat to completely cure. So with that, I'm going to let it sit for an hour at least, and then I'm going to come back, glue in the shock cord mount, and we'll do a final closeout. Okay, real quick before we end, I do want to remind you, don't forget about your nose cone. So let's do a quick coating on the clear nose cone. And you want to find a way to store your nose cone either vertically, up or down, because you don't want to sit like this, because it'll develop like a run basically on the bottom side, because the gravity is going to let all the finish go to the bottom. So just make sure it's vertically one way or the other, so you get an even coat all the way around. So I'm just going to suspend this using just a little toothbrush handle like that. I'm going to set that on the edge of a desk and just let it hang and air dry, and then this will be done. Okay, today's the day we're going to officially finish up the Retro Wizard. As you can see, the clear coat has completely dried, and there is zero cracking or runs or anything, no blemishes whatsoever in a single coat of the Pledge. Now, I'm probably just going to leave it the 1 coat. I really don't think it's going to need a second coat. If I did want to put a second coat on it though, for flight purposes, I would wait at least 24 hours until it completely dries. The problem I was having before was I was putting down a coat, letting it dry for 30 minutes, and then putting down the second coat, and then I would start to get this cracking throughout. And to me, that tells me that I just wasn't letting the bottom coat cure out far enough. So again, I'd say 24 hours between coats, but I'm just going to leave this as one coat and call it good. So really all we need to do now is install the shock cord mount and then tie that end to the nose cone, which also is dried with the pledge, and we are done. So let's go ahead and get that done. Got some wood glue here and a paper towel, and this is as simple as putting glue on the face of the shock cord mount, and then using my finger to spread it. I probably put a little too much on, but that's okay. We can wipe some off. So that's just going to make it longer to dry the more glue you have on there. But you want to definitely get all the corners and the edges, because those would be the first things that would lift on you. Some glue down in that corner. Okay, now I definitely want to get all the glue off my fingers because I'm going to be handling the rocket now. And the last thing you want to do is ruin a good finish with glue on your fingers. So, all right, I'm going to push this down at least. Well, you have to go at least as far as the shoulder, but I'm going to go down about as far as my finger will allow it. So I'd say 1.5 inches, 2 inches possibly, to get this up in there. So you just kind of work into the tube. Okay, flip it over so you can access the dry side. I'm going to push it down and down against the tube, and I'm going to use my other hand to support the body tube to give me something to press up against. And be sure you clean your hands thoroughly with soap and water before you do this, because you don't want to transfer any oils or dirt onto the rocket body. Especially after you spend all that time trying to do a pretty job of finishing it. You don't want to ruin it. Okay, I think it's down pretty flat. You can look down the tube. Yeah. All the corners are down, all the sides are down. It is done. Okay, so let that set. Now I'm going to go ahead and tie the cord to the nose cone, but I'm not going to put the cord in the rocket body just yet, because I don't want any of it to snag on the glue and get caught in there with the glue. But we can go ahead and tie up the nose cone and have that ready to go. And that's just a matter of doing a couple of half knots here. Okay, and well, 2 more operations on this front. I want to trim off this little tail here, because you definitely don't want it to be able to get caught up on the side of the shoulder, because if it does, it's going to wedge itself in. And even though this is a display model, if this were to fly and that were to get caught in there, it could jam up and not allow the nose cone to pop off at ejection. So you just want to clear that shoulder. So I'm going to trim that down to about 1/8 of an inch or so. That's enough to keep the knot secure, but short enough where it won't get caught in the shoulder. And then you also want to get your glue and just put a little dab of glue on the knot and just kind of work it into the knot. That'll help prevent it from ever opening up on you. Okay. So I'm going to let this sit for, about 30 minutes or so, and we're going to come back and do our final closeout, because officially the rocket is done. Okay, that concludes the 2-part series on the building of the Estes Wizard, both the modern version and the retro original classic version. Again, this is the first one we did in part 1. A little more detailed on the build video because it was the first time doing it. The second video, this one part 2, not quite as detailed, but a few differences. For example, the balsa nose cone as opposed to the newer plastic one. But the decals are different and the paint scheme is different. That's the only difference. The fin sets, the body tube, everything else is identical. If I were to build these to fly them, I would probably adapt an engine hook to hold the motor a little bit more secure. But again, I built these primarily as display models to go on the shelf. But I did build them to fly if that, were to need to happen, but I don't foresee that ever happening. But it was a fun build on both of them. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed sharing along with you guys. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to ask away, or just post your comments in the video, in the comment section. Looking forward to the next build project. We're probably going to go into the series of the Alpha rockets. I'm looking forward to doing some vintage Alphas and all the way through the modern day Alpha 3. So with that, I'll let you guys go. Have a great time building your Wizard. Hope you enjoyed me watching me build mine. So with that, have a great one. God bless, and we'll catch you on the next video.